What's up, guys? It's Rob Bailey, Holistic Renegade here. Welcome to Masculinity Rising, where my mission is to create a world where men can rise to their absolute fullest potential. I strive to empower men to cultivate the strength, the power, and the presence to become powerful leaders for themselves, for their families, and for their professions. My ultimate goal is to build a community of absolutely uncommon men who embody physical vitality, mental resilience, emotional intelligence, and are spiritually grounded. Through Masculinity Rising, I am here to create a movement that transforms the lives of men, of women, of children, and society as a whole. Today I have my man Grant Thomas joining me, who is an absolute amazing person, an absolute amazing dude who lives in the rhythm of life.
Yo.
Here he is. Grant, my man.
Thanks, Rob.
Welcome.
Oh, I'm doing well.
How you doing?
Yeah. Got dropped into a great space by one of the best. So thank you for some guidance and breath before this.
I appreciate that. And I'm excited, super excited to have you here. Grant and I connected a few years ago. We made our first connection through Mike Bledsoe and the Strong Coach. And I liked Grant relatively immediately, which you might be surprised to learn that I don't like everyone right away. But actually, hold on one second. The thing that really forced me to, or not forced me, but it really invited me into Grant's space a little bit more was his rhythm. Just one, the way that he speaks, which you're going to get to feel. But two, he was doing this crazy thing that I have avoided for a long time. I think a lot of dudes had avoided for a long time, which was dancing and just moving. And I was like, wow, I want to know a little bit more about this dude and what he's up to. And he absolutely hooked me on that movement, drew me in, and then evolved this framework that he calls the Smooth framework. And Grant, can you tell us a little bit about Smooth and you so we can learn what it means to move smooth?
Yeah. I mean, I think a good place to start with Smooth is how I started this journey. All right, cool. We're back. Yeah. How I started this journey, which was, I was an athletic kid, grew up, and was playing high school sports, sustained a few injuries. And after all that was done, my identity of an athlete remained, and I tried to find that in other means, mainly through bodybuilding and weightlifting, and doing that really irresponsibly, to the point where in the course of 2 years, I had a lot of imbalances, a lot of asymmetries, hadn't really addressed the injuries that I had sustained through football and baseball. And ultimately, I was in chronic pain at the age of 19. So the stuff that most people were doing at my age in the gym with exercise didn't work for me. It actually bound me up further, and I was responsible for putting my body through that. But the modalities that were available just did not speak to me. And that was really heartbreaking. I had to shift my focus into other things in my life. I slipped into a big state of depression because I simply just stopped doing what I love to do. I was addicted to going to the gym 7 days a week, was not resting. I loved the pump. I loved being big and all that. And I was willing to work through pain for that until I wasn't. And that's really what led me down a path of, let's say, alternative approaches to movement. And I say alternative, but it's just a big joke to me because that's what it is. Like, this is it. So when I talk about Smooth, when this stuff really resonates with my body, in a very natural and holistic way. And therefore, if you want to call it alternative, great, call it whatever you want. It works. So it's an amazing lens to look at movement through, and ultimately creating a launch point for anybody, regardless of what they're dealing with their body, to gain a better understanding of their body and ultimately learn how to strengthen their own unique body. Then you get to take it into the fun stuff. Then you get to take it into the expression. And I recognize that's what was really limited about those mainstream approaches to fitness, let's say, that I was into back in college when I took on the identity of being someone in chronic pain, to a lot of the modalities that took me out of that as well. There's a lot of structure, and all that stuff is really great to get you started, but ultimately, when one continues on the path, there is a recognition that, there's more to this. How can I make this more me? How can I express myself through what I do? And if you don't recognize that, what it shows up as is boredom. So I'm bored. I'm sick and tired of what I'm doing in the gym. Well, this is a great opportunity to get curious, to get creative, to try something new, to get out of your comfort zone, to stretch and open up the possibilities. And so, I was filming some content this morning for Smooth, and this is really what it is. It's daily movement that's going to get your body activated and sensing your body as well, better understanding of your body, taking that into some strengthening movements, and on particular days that might be more focused on recovery stuff, in terms of just down regulating, stretching, mobilizing, all that, and then play. So this morning, the play protocol, wow, that sounds so weird, was, yeah.
Alliteration, man, it's powerful. Play protocol is powerful.
Yeah, I didn't even kick the hacky sack around. I just had my hands here, and I was really focused on just tapping the hacky sack back and forth between my left and right hand, really focused on the sound, the rhythm, the feel, the texture, what I'm seeing as well. What color is the hacky sack? What's the logo say? It says Smooth, of course. And again, just getting in touch with that sensory experience. I didn't taste the hacky sack today, but I did try to smell it. So I will let you know that. But yeah, weird rambling way to describe Smooth, but it's a movement framework that, one can scale their body weight movement into forms of expression and play.
Yeah, and so rewinding, I'm so curious about your journey, your path. Really, what really got you from where you were at the age of 19, grinding away at the gym, as so many of us do, living that life of like, no pain, no gain. If something doesn't hurt, I'm not doing it right. And you had chronic back pain, so things were hurting, and you're like, I'm not doing it right. What were you doing at that time? What did your movement program, or what did your exercise routine look like at that time? And then secondly, what was the moment that hit you that you're like, this is not working, I need to change something?
It was a classic bro split that I learned back in high school. Was probably not as many exercises with the legs, but a lot of back and bi, a lot of chest and tri, shoulders and abs, and the rest days would be, I would start out like, I'm just gonna do some stretching, usually weighted, and then those would turn into like a full-blown workout. So even the rest days that I was giving myself ended up turning into a lot of work. And the same remains today. I really enjoy the physical sensations of my body. I'm a very physical person. I feel that energy very strongly, but it just wasn't being channeled responsibly, and I wasn't really going about it in a way that made sense for the long term. And like you said, I was lifting weights in pain to put on mass, to put on muscle, and the movement patterns were dysfunctional. And I still was so wrapped up in the ego. I was still so wrapped up in, let's say, the physical appearance. And when I look back on that today, it's like, what was I thinking? Like, I'm 5'8". Do I really need to be 200 pounds? Like, do I need to be can I fit through doors? Like, it was one of those things where it was, looking back on it, it doesn't make sense, but I can also put myself back into that situation and recognize, wow, I was really wrapped up in how I looked, and I wanted to look athletic. I wanted to be somebody that people are like, wow, look at this guy's body. So yeah, I mean, that's really what the workouts were. It wasn't too complex. It was just piling on weights and going at it. And my numbers weren't even that great when it came to stuff like bench press. Again, I was just dealing with a very dysfunctional body at the time. So was able to put on mass, but couldn't really do anything with it. And so, really like the first, I just woke up one day. I really don't remember. I remember I stopped taking pre-workout because I was like recognizing, like, wow, my face is like and
You mean that's not supposed to happen? Oh, I lost audio for a second. Hold on. Can you hear me? Yeah, now I can hear you. Can you hear me? Perfect. We went out for a second. So you're like, I stopped taking pre-workout one day, and then I said, you mean that's not supposed to happen?
Tingling hands, like I felt awful. And so I finally recognized, hey, this isn't a sensation that I want. And then I started to really recognize, like, hey, I can't really do this anymore. It's only getting worse. It's irresponsible. And the voice just kept getting louder and louder in my head, like, hey, change what you're doing. And so the first thing I did was I pirated Rodney Yee yoga. I don't know if you're familiar with Rodney Yee, but an OG in, let's say, the DVD fitness space. I pirated that on like eTorrent or something. Awesome. And because I was so embarrassed, I was so balled up, inflexible. I was so embarrassed I could not go to a yoga class. I thought I was going to get hurt. And so I downloaded like Gentle Yoga by Rodney Yee and, started doing that in my bedroom. And it was excruciating. It wasn't even hard. Like, it was his easiest video, and yet I was struggling with it. And so that was really my first venture into just doing something that didn't involve weights. And through that, in college, I got into yoga pretty deep. Was practicing probably 3-4 times a week at a studio, and I also sought out some guidance from some more hybrid studios that were incorporating functional fitness with yoga. And I was still very frustrated with fitness throughout my college years, but I did my best to stay active, and I wasn't hitting it every day. To be very, very inconsistent. But I was continuing to show up and at least just giving my body a dose of something that at the time was really beneficial for me. And so after I got out of college, I got a desk job, and I just started sitting at the desk all the time, and like a lot of the tensions and the pains and all that stuff started to trickle back in. And so I worked at like an 8-person startup, and I could wear sweatpants to work, and I just was doing everything I could to mitigate all the postural stuff that I was experiencing from sitting at a desk all day long. And again, knowing what I know now, I would approach that completely different. But at the time, it was just, again, the best program is the one that you do. And I was at lunch, doing something to stretch out, to mobilize, brought bands to work, and just tried to stay active. Another thing that came up during that was I put on a bunch of weight. Like, it wasn't anything crazy, but I put on about 10, 15 pounds when I started working at a desk, and I was like, this is not the business. I can't do this. No, that's not me. And so again, some egotistical stuff, but it's there sometimes as a good motivator for us to get back on the horse. And so over the course of 4 years working at that business, a lot of my coworkers were saying stuff like, man, why don't you just do this for a living? And I started seeing a physical therapist to work through some specific movement patterns. And she was like, the way you talk about this, like, you could be doing this. And I was like, huh. So I got certified. I quit my job. I had, good amount of money in the bank, and I became a super broke trainer that made nothing in like the first year. So I was super stressed. Wasn't making any money. Thought I was going to get in the best shape of my life. Back to square one. I was working out a ton. Looked different. Same shit. No rest. Falling back into that cycle. It just looked different. The spiral. So I had like some really, I'll save you the details, but my body was failing me. I dropped a bunch of weight, which is a horrible indicator. If like you don't have weight to lose, it's a horrible indicator of where you are in your health. It means you're incredibly stressed. Could not sleep. I didn't like where I worked, so I ended up finding a new space. Shout out to my buddy Mario in San Francisco. Kinetic Playground was an amazing home for me, and it really allowed me to reshape how I approach movement, how I approach fitness. And so there was a period of, let's say, hardness back in college. I was really addicted to being hard, and then I got really soft. And then I slowly but surely built back up into that hard person, but it was really functional. And then I had to swing the complete other way and just go into rest, digest, recovery mode, Tai Chi, Qigong, breath work, stuff that was really focused more on soothing and centering my nervous system. And about halfway through 2020, I ran a program called Active De-Stress, which was really focused on bringing in the neurology of movement, factoring in what stress is like in your body and how to alleviate that stress through physical practice and through understanding how your brain works, how your brain reacts to stress. Because we need stress. It's how we grow. But if we have no resilience to it, then it's going to break us down. So being able to build a better relationship with stress was really my focus in 2020. And since then, I hope I've learned my lesson. But yeah, really just approaching it from more of a harmonious and balanced perspective. A lot of body weight movement from the strength component, from the skill component, and then factoring in a lot of postural stuff. And breathing and expanding my frame so I'm decompressed and I'm opened up. And then, just seeing how that percolates, when the body is more fully expressed through the posture, what's available, so much more becomes available. And this is when dance really came knocking on my door, and always was a pretty rhythmic person. I wouldn't say like from a structural sense, but back in my early 20s, my buddies would take me out and we'd get super drunk and I'd be the spectacle. And it was a lot of fun. And it was a diminished state, but I was able to feel into that place of myself. And so circling back after having shedded a lot of skin, I was able to revisit dance from a different perspective and started to weave in different somatic elements to it. We wove in some aspects of structure as well. Very much continue to be curious about house dance. It's an amazing expression of the human body, and basically I just find like that pulse through the body incredibly therapeutic. And so the different ways that I can arrange my body and move in these intricate patterns of rhythm, it's very much something that I want to continue to explore and do on a weekly basis. And so, hacky sack, same thing. man, super cool, talking about the sensory experience. You know, it's very much something that's going to activate your vision, activate your balance systems, coordination, and a huge component of rhythm. And then there's just like this crazy success failure matrix that opens up where, you know, you get too big for your britches and then it hits the ground. And then there's certain days where like you just can't succeed at all and you just got to continue to deal with failure, and that's life. So I've found a ton of therapy through these different means of movement and expression as well.
It sounds like you really seen a connection between your exploration of movement and your movement practice now, which is different than the bro bodybuilder split that you were on when you were 19, and the challenges that are presented to you in that movement practice and how those are invitations to growth, both in your body, but then also mentally, emotionally, spiritually even. But it's not just that, it translates into the rest of your life as well. And there's a ton I'm interested in unpacking, especially, and I want to go back to your story in a moment about yoga and how you had a similar experience to a lot of you. It's just like, I'm way too inflexible to jump into this. I want to walk through that. I want to walk through the desk work, because I think a lot of guys are in the exact same place that you were then. But I'm really interested in the dance and the movement aspect. And I know that you've taken that and evolved that into a different rhythmic movement practice with Smooth, if I can describe it that way. Dance is so, rhythmic movement, we'll just leave it there, is so huge because it allows you to, when you're flowing in your body, to get into a flow state mentally, emotionally, spiritually as well. And it's something that we did as men. It was a super masculine thing to do in our tribes, round the fire, as a method of expression, and a method of connection, and a method of storytelling that we have totally lost. So I'm curious what your thoughts are about that in particular, that rhythmic movement, and how that translates over to the rest of your life.
We'll start here because I think this is the most pragmatic place to start, but then we can start to drift into some different spots. Like going back to the boredom thing. When I get bored, it's an opportunity to become curious. And so rather than just get stuck in that boredom, I want to find different ways to challenge myself. In the past, that literally used to be, let me put on 5 more pounds. Let me put on 5 more pounds. Like that was the only scale of challenge. The only way I was getting progressive overload in my life was that. Incredibly one-dimensional. I love to move. I love the sensations of the physical body, right? So how can I start to multi-dimensionally, progressively overload myself, okay? I don't know if that even makes sense, but how can I start to challenge myself in different ways and ultimately grow through those challenges? Stressors. Instead of saying, hey, I got to put a bunch of weight on my back, why don't I add a rhythmic component to it? One of the best ways to cognitively and physically stress yourself. Most men, most people that you try to put into some sort of structure with movement, and that is a key there too. That is a factor of stress there, because there can be that person that's like, I'm still this person that, oh, I'm a good dancer, and I'm just flowing, all that, and that's fantastic. But what I'm saying is, in order to really stress yourself, that avenue for me was something that was really calling me. At a certain point, I said, hey, if I want to get better at dance, I need to start stressing myself. I can't just throw on the music and just flow around. I want to start stressing myself. And that was a choice that I made. So when it comes to the rhythmic nature of movement, now I started to feel more of that structure within, let's say, music, because I predominantly will move to music. Doesn't mean I don't go into silence sometimes and feel more of the natural rhythms, but I really do enjoy being moved by the music. And when I started to add structure, it was tough. At first, I didn't have the ability to feel into the structure at all.
What do you mean by structure, Grant? What do you mean by introducing structure to that? Because I'm ready to dance and flow here, but how do I bring structure to rhythmic movement, whether it's dance or animalistic flowing? You talked about qigong, that stuff.
Yeah,
What is structure?
Honestly, I would think of it as a sphere. Okay, so you could say box, but I don't like boxes. Okay, I like spheres.
Boxes are rigid.
Continue to expand upon it. So let's say I give you a structured dance step. Let's say pas de bourrée, which is a ballet style dance step. Most men that I would say, hey, we're going to do a ballet step, they would either say that's stupid, but what they are saying is I'm scared to do that. And so not only is that going to be a physical stressor, because guess what? They're probably not going to be able to do it. Their brain's probably not going to be able to comprehend the pattern at first. So those are 2 points of stress right there. And then you're factoring in some mental and emotional stuff of, hey, no, this is stupid, but really I'm scared to do it. And then there's this spiritual aspect of, oh man, if I actually integrate this, man, I could be a better dancer. Whoa. So you have this aspect to really level up through structure. Let's take it into something simple as well, like qigong. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to do this move for 108 reps. I'm going to feel the rhythm for 108 reps. I mean, yeah, it's physically challenging, but damn, the other shit is like, it's even more challenging, right? Staying focused and grounded in your body for 108 reps.
Yeah. If I can interrupt you for a second and interrupt your flow, and then we'll come back to it. We'll plug that flow right back in. I've done qigong work like that with clients, and you're like, I'm going to breathe this way 108 times and just get into a movement rhythm to get in sync. And I always find it so interesting when I experience it myself, but then also when somebody texts me the next day and they're like, I really worked out yesterday. Like I feel that. And then the other thing that you mentioned, you're talking about introducing dance or any form of rhythmic movement into standard guys' exercise routine. And I remember it was a very fun opportunity for me when my wife and I started dating. She's a dance teacher, she went to U of I for dance. And she was like, hey, the studio I teach at is putting on a Nutcracker production. Do you want to be in it with me? And I was like, oh, I've never done like dance other than drunk dancing. And yeah, I did it. We did it 2 years in a row. And I remember Tombe pas de bourrée across the floor in between sets of like heavy squats. And I remember going into our practice sessions, like I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm a super athletic dude. I do CrossFit style workouts. Like I can lift heavy, I can move, I can jump really high. But going into that, it was this whole new thing that challenged me in a whole new way. And that actually, increased my physical fitness and my ability to excel in the weight room. But more than that, it increased my confidence and my ability to do things in all other areas of my life. Like everything else was easier. I interacted with people at work way more efficiently, effectively, smoothly. I interacted with my wife way better. And we also made a little connection through that and just all other areas of my life. So this stuff is impactful. So powerful. And like you said, when you get bored, it's an invitation to curiosity. I'm curious how I got to that, because so many people get bored and they're just like, fuck it, I'm going to quit and go do something else. No, man, but I'm going to shut up.
Really appreciate you pulling me out of, let's say, some of the nitty gritty and really getting it back to the overarching themes of why this work is important. Those challenges and stressors that you experience, let's say with something like dance, they make you more adaptable. You have more data points. You've taken in more information and more experience, which allows you to perform better in your life. And let's be honest, like dancing, I mean, sometimes you can say, oh yeah, like this is for me, but let's be honest, man, it's a performance. And I think that get into that, get into that aspect of performing well and recognizing, hey, there's going to be a lot of bad performances. There's going to be a lot of reps and mistakes that are involved in that, but ultimately that's going to lead to me performing better. And like you said, it's if I can do that, if I can learn that, then that allows me to look into like the bigger realms of pattern recognition. Man, if I can recognize this pattern in the music, great. I can see other patterns in my life. Communication aspect is massive. Self-talk when learning something new like that. I'm huge on this in terms of real self-talk. There's a lot of positive self-talk out there, and I'm about it, but honestly, you got to be real with yourself. If it's all positive stuff, like, and you're again, you might not be being real with yourself. And I think that's a really important aspect of this. It's like, you know what, I did suck. I did suck in my dance practice today, right? And that's okay. Knowing that you're continuing to move forward and that you're able to take some of those lumps sometimes, that is becoming resilient to stress. And but back to the self-talk thing, when you are communicating better with yourself, that will absolutely exude into how you communicate with others and how you communicate with the world. I truly believe that if we can't listen to ourselves, if we can't listen to our bodies and at least observe what's happening with that conversation, there's no way that we're going to be a good listener for other people. There's no way that we're going to be able to articulate a response that makes sense given what was just said. And so it's all relational. When we're talking about those stressors, when we're talking about those patterns, when we're talking about communication, all this stuff is relational. So if it applies to, let's say, your movement practice, you better believe it's going to apply to what you're doing in your life. And if your movement practice is incredibly one-dimensional, that's what you're going to be.
Yeah, so much of all of your life, every bit of it, is an externalization of what's happening in here. And if you're uncoordinated in your movement, that's going to be reflected outward. And we pick up thousands of bits of information about the posture of the person in front of us. You guys are looking at us, if you're watching this on video right now, and you're picking up things about our mental and emotional state without having to think about it. And by coordinating your movement, you change your posture. You're changing your posture, you change your hormones just by getting upright and out of this fear posture, which we get in when we're hurt, when we're in pain, when you were in your chronic back pain, when I've been in chronic knee pain and things like that before. And that increases cortisol secretion, makes you a little bit more irritable and likely to do and say things that you're like, I shouldn't have done that, whether it's doing something in the gym or doing something at work or doing something while you're driving in the car or getting irritated about the old lady that doesn't know how to use the checkout thing at Whole Foods, or something that your partner said. All increasing your coordination, your communication from hands to feet to brain internally will take that externally and really help you to show up more confident in your posture. And that just by upright, or what's his name? Ben Stewart had a cool show where he was talking about just holding your hands up. This is our wheel of inspiration and posture. If we're talking about three treasures meditation for Qigong, just by holding your hands over your head for 2 to 3 minutes, you increase your testosterone production, which enables you to show up more confidently and to take risks and do things that you're a little bit afraid of and overcome that boredom that you were talking about without getting locked into it and stuck into it. So I'm curious, how can a dude or a warrior woman who's listening to this, who's watching this, incorporate smooth movement into what they're doing already if they have an exercise routine? If they don't, how can they incorporate it in the smallest and most impactful way right now?
The biggest thing that we can do to just come more into our physical experience is get in touch with our senses. And so one of the things that I love to focus on with Smooth, and it's super accessible, again, I'm not recreating, or I'm not creating something new. This is all just, it's out there. So one, I want to be in my breath. How can I better be in my breath, better sensing my breath? Well, there's a few things that we can do with that, but one, go see Rob, okay? But yeah. So I would say focus on what's actually happening with the pathway of your breath. And this is more imagery, but as you inhale through your nose, I imagine some of you out there have been like, oh, the meditative technique or the mindfulness technique that is like feeling your nostrils and what the air is, what temperature the air is. Okay, so that's a great one right there. As that breath starts to come up into the nasal cavity, it will start to fill up the sinuses, which are actually like behind your eyes. And this is a big thing, huge thing. So with our breath, we're actually able to sense and activate all this stuff around our eyes. From there, the breath goes down, it starts to expand. Let's say the diaphragm comes out and we start to expand, or pulls down and we start to expand that rib cage. And we want to get a better sense of that expansion and contraction back to the midline. So the breath, not only are you going to be activating some of the stuff around the posture, but you're able to start to expand your frame. Get those gills that are your rib cage expanding, and you start to sense and feel into a bigger space. Already, your body will feel safer. And when your body feels safer, you're more relaxed, and you actually have a lot more capacity and energy to perform. This is what I think a lot of people get mixed up on. When you are balled up in tension, yes, you are, let's say you have a lot of strength to hold everything together, but it's exhausting. So if I'm more open, I actually have a lot more available there. So breath is going to be a big one, and essentially breathing into the posture that you want. Second thing, your breath just activated your eyes. Now, if you got eyes and you can see through them, up to about 70% of the information that's required for you to coordinate movement comes through your eyes. This is your brain externally facing. They straight up grow out of your brain. These are important. So if I can start to sense my reality through my eyes, not just, oh, do eye exercises, but really be able to sense this. This is not blurry versus clear vision. If I got blurry vision, I can still take in my environment. I can still map spatially and feel safer and stronger as a human. Other thing we can do there, head and eye movement is very much going to factor into our vestibular system, our balance system. So practice some balance. Super simple, balance on one leg at the grocery store. There's tons of different things you can do that are super low threshold that will stress you, right? Low consequence, but they will stress you, okay? Balance on one foot. Now, go stand on a 2x4 and balance on that. You're literally an inch or two off the ground, and it's going to make you shake. It's going to challenge your system. It's all we're doing here. We're finding different ways to challenge our system. Calibrate the body, get to know it. Last piece I will say here, from like the bare bones, and I know this is kind of some weird shit, but hey, this is how the body works. This is how our nervous system works. Get into your feet and get into your hands. But not just into them. We want to, again, sense through our hands. So best way I know this is to get on all fours and start crawling, whether that be with your knees on the ground in more of like a 6-point crawl or a baby crawl. That's fine. perfectly great places to start. You could also just take those knees up, make it a little bit more challenging, but start to sense the world, the surfaces through your hands. So I'm not just being like, oh, I feel the floor in my hands. I feel that pressure. I feel that ground force reaction up into the center of my body. Same thing goes with the feet. Like I said, this is just like Qigong, basically. If I stand in a horse stance and I get into my feet and I start to press through my feet, I'm going to feel that up through my body. I'm going to start to feel stretching in my hips. I'm going to start to feel my spine influenced by what's happening through my pelvis and my hips. I might even start to be able to press through my right foot and take my neck this way and literally stretch the fascia all the way from my feet to the base of my skull. So that's where I would tell people to start. Get into your senses. So get on the ground, crawl around, spend some time with your shoes off, just pressing your feet into the ground and being in whatever this martial arts space is. We all got it. It's all there. Even if it doesn't work in combat, we all got it, okay? And then the other thing, when you go out on a walk, be curious. Oh, that's a cool decoration on that house. Oh man, that squirrel's got a huge acorn. Like, just start to be curious and take in what's happening around you. If you get that dialed in, and I know it might sound a little complex, but once you start to feel it, it's innate. Once you start to sense this stuff, it's how our body works, how our nervous system works. Your body wants to go there. Your brain wants to go there. Give it the stimulus. That's it.
I love that. And we evolved in nature for 200,000 years before this moment. And we were so deeply tuned into each of our senses and to our breath. And that helped us stay parasympathetic, more relaxed, and less wound up all the time. And when we were able to tap into those things, even after we ran from a giant short-faced bear, which could run 60 miles an hour in North America, terrifying if you think about that thing. That's what our ancestors had to deal with 10,000 years ago. You could flip back into being chill. Now, when I have the wrong piece of mail arrive at my door, I feel a little nervous. But like my ancestors were worrying about waking up, getting eaten by this giant bear. So one, in between sets, exercises, or in between work or anything that you're doing in your life, you can take a moment to connect to your breath. And I used to be the totally weird dude who I'd crank out like a set of like 350-pound squats and then come out and I'd do some breathing squats and just try and feel my breath for like 1, 2, 3 minutes, move super slowly. And I could hear the other trainers like, yeah, that's Rob. That's the weird dude. You should work with him.
He gets results.
You know, we can bring that kind of thing in. Two, we can use that gaze. One of my favorite techniques that I've learned for self-regulation and increasing flow physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually is that owl gaze. It's how much can I send my gaze out? How much can I take in from my peripheral vision? Because that comes in faster than your direct vision. And a lion, their eyes are on the front of their face because they're more sympathetic dominant. They have to go. They have to catch something. But herbivores, their eyes are more on the side of their face. Look at a horse. And they are more parasympathetic dominant, more relaxed. And because of that, when you send your gaze out, you fire up alpha brainwaves, which connects you to your entire potential in your brain. All of a sudden you can think clearly. Those shower thoughts that you're like, wow, these are miraculous. Why does God send me information in the shower? All of a sudden you can have those all the time in the middle of your workout or in the middle of your workday. If you just stand up, you breathe, send your gaze out. And if you start balancing on things, your right and left foot balance are going to tell you how well is your brain communicating. And if you're wobbling on one side, you're not on the other, well, that's something to work on. We got to look at your spine. You talked about using your breath to decompress your vertebrae. It's natural chiropractic work, which is what yoga is too. And then fourth is really being curious about everything. Everything that you do when you're exercising, when you're in your work environment, using your breath, using your gaze, using that feeling in your feet, or just sensing, not just the sensations, but like, where's the pressure on my hand right now? So we can reestablish the connection to all different areas of our body, and then also outwardly too. I want to move us towards wrapping this thing up, but we can. I have two more questions that I want to ask.
Can I just wrap up one on
cool
everything we talked about here?
Yeah, let's go.
You can really start to boil this stuff down. Let's say the sensory experience that we're talking about, or just that, intentional approach to, you could call it mindfulness, you could call it awareness, you could call it presence. And I think it's important to recognize that where we are in this web of information that we're taking in. And I hope that what we're talking about here, next time you hear mindfulness, next time you hear awareness, next time you hear presence, you're able to better understand it from that perspective. Because it's kind of cliche to just throw those words around, but that's really what they are. They bring us in, like our sensory experience brings us into more presence, and more is available when that's the case. We are more mindful. Mindful is actually more of like this body term. Like, I know it's mindful, but it's like the mind-body connection there. So when one's being mindful, they are actually more embodied. They're more in their physical presence right there. Even if they are like in their mind, like they're physically grounded. And that's another one right there, pressing the feet through the ground, grounded. So I just wanted to highlight that these words are thrown around a lot. This is what people are talking about, or at least they should be. So.
Yeah. When I think of mindful, I think of it as the counter, the opposite of being mindless and just being on autopilot. And being mindful brings you here, brings you into autonomy, the ability to choose what you're going to do next. And my favorite mindfulness motto is do what you're doing while you're doing it, rather than having your mind somewhere else or trying to do 10 things at once. Like you said, like, wow, that squirrel's really fat right now. That's super interesting. Where that dude's been working on digging that hole for 20 minutes. That squirrel hasn't gotten anything yet, but he's going for it. And then when I think of awareness, I think of breaking that up. Where, WHERE-ness, where am I right now? Versus everywhere else. Yeah, everywhere else that my mind is. Awareness. These things bring you into that mindfulness, that awareness, that presence, which is your present. It's your gift to yourself in the world.
I love the awareness there, because that's literally what those functions of the nervous system are providing. Where am I in space? Right? I'm able to sense where I am. So thanks, man. That was money.
Yeah. I want to rewind with you for a second, because there are two things that I think are really valuable to unpack a little bit more, but we'll keep them relatively short. So I want to get your elevator speeches on these things. One, you downloaded the yoga DVDs and you went into that because you were like, I'm stiff, kind of embarrassed to go to a yoga class, which is what most dudes experience, and why I rejected it for so long until I accidentally did it. And then I was like, oh, well, now I teach it.
Whoops.
What was your experience? Right. Whoops. So what changes did you notice in yourself as you began doing that practice?
Well, I would say it was really tough early on. Like, I barely could breathe in like any sort of twisted position through my spine. So there was just a ton of resistance, and it took a while. But I will say, as I started to open up my body, and then started to attend classes, I became way more of let's say, my essence as a person. There was a lot of stuff that I was into in college, but very much grazed on early on in those first couple of years. And as I started to open up my body, I became more connected with people that I found were like-minded, or I just really appreciated their perspective. And so my community grew, and I was able to interact with a large variety of people from different backgrounds, and that was really, let's say, new, being a sheltered suburban boy. And so that was something that really opened up. And then again, the relational aspect, as I started to feel, let's say, my body open up and experience new possibility there, I was more open to things like acupuncture and going ballroom dancing, and I remember getting super drunk for that though. So this is still college, guys, but but yeah, music interests expanded greatly. And I very much started to look into more of the esoteric or the spiritual. And so very much something that when I look back at those years of, let's say, finding myself, that process of, let's say, starting yoga, getting into breath, opening up my body, were huge for that self-discovery as well. So much more became available. And as I started to let go of certain stories or tensions in my body, like I said, there was more space for new stuff to come in, new relationships, new interests. My life really started to blossom in a new way.
Yeah, what a cool thing, coming off the back of the chronic back pain, the boredom and the depression that you were experiencing through that, to get into this practice and have it open up your body and then open your mind to new possibilities, which you stepped into, but then also on top of that, increase connection to yourself and outwardly with people around you. So that's awesome. The other thing I was curious about is that for that, I think you said 4 years you were working with a startup, you had a desk job. Now you're like, I'd handle that totally differently. But I'm curious, what did you notice within your body, the changes from being in that position? How did that impact you? And then what is your advice for guys and warrior women listening to this, viewing this, that are in that position right now?
I mean, you're not going to solve it all at once. And I think anytime you start to go into those places of like, okay, let me crack my back and get this temporary relief and just go back into the posture that I was in, that's where I noticed a lot of what I was doing, just kind of not super conscious, but just going for some sense of relief. And then it's fatiguing. Even though you're essentially in resting positions all day long, it is fatiguing on your posture. So I think just recognizing that it's going to be a dynamic thing is super big. So in terms of, what to be aware of with that, well, where am I in space? Posture check-ins, setting a timer once every hour, or I think Insight Timer has something that's supposed to be for taking a deep breath, but it just randomly does it throughout the day. So you could set something up like that where you're able to check in on your posture, and that literally could just be standing up and taking a few breaths, going through a few positions or postures that help lengthen out your spine and restore some strength there. And then there's so basically some charging up of your posture or of your nervous system. Let's say I do that for 5 minutes. I take a little break. I sit back down. The next hour, even if I fall out of that, even if I fall into a suboptimal posture, I am starting to train myself and train my nervous system as to where I want to be operating from a more open and expressive place, versus just, hey, this is the grind. I'm sitting at my desk and I'm just continuously collapsing into a tighter, smaller, more protected, more safe, because I am fearful of opening up, or my body is fearful of opening up based on the stimulus I've been giving it. So, I mean, the other obvious one would be to give your body a break from, let's say, that environment. So separate yourself from that environment, whether you're working at home or working in an office. Stand up, go outside, and completely reset, because your eyes are very much fixated at this. This is what I mean. I have a client after this, but after that client, I'm going to go out for a walk and start to get more variety. Good opportunity to just get some steps in, a little bit of movement, some stretching, that sort of thing. And I would also say, like what I said earlier, is it's a slow process if you are stuck in a posture like that, but also recognizing like your resilience to stress. So I worked at a gym in San Francisco, and people would come in there for fitness classes after work, and they would just go super hard. And they would get maybe this feeling of satisfaction. Oh, I got the sweat on, all this. But really ask yourself what your body needs, and start to orient what sort of dosage or prescription you give yourself with movement through what you truly need. Because so many people are being sold, hey, this is what you need, in terms of going to like a boot camp fitness class or a CrossFit class. When you have been stressing your posture, even though you've been resting all day, you've been stressing your posture under gravity into a way that, let's say, doesn't necessarily support growth. It will be putting stress on your body in some particular ways that, yes, ultimately you are taking in that stressor, but is that a good stressor for you at that particular time? That is something to ask yourself. What are you doing movement-wise? Most people can benefit from, let's say, doing something hard like that once or twice a week, and then the rest of the stuff is just, hey, what feels good? What's challenging but enjoying? I mean, something that is really key when it comes to adherence to a program or just consistency is enjoyment. And all we're doing when it comes to exercise and these different forms of modalities, or like learning this move or this move or this skill, we're picking and choosing what problem we want to solve. And if you don't care about the problem, and again, this happens a lot. Hey, I've been doing CrossFit for 10 years and now it's getting fucking boring. Excuse my language. And you're just like, well, I'm just going to keep showing up to CrossFit. It's like, no, you are tired of solving that problem. That's it. So go find a new problem. Challenge yourself. Get outside your comfort zone. So if you find yourself in a rut, whether it's sitting at a desk or in a rut with your workout program or what you do for fitness, I think it's really important to ask yourself with that question of, hey, what does my body really need here? And get curious. Ask people questions. Rob and I are both great examples of how we completely dropped what we were doing and tried something completely different. And that's the thing. The movement practice is going to look different for everybody, what problems they are experiencing. And I think that's super beautiful. There's tons of people out there that can do more impressive shit than me, better hand balancing, way better dancers, all this. And that's okay. Like, they are solving different problems than me right now. And I'm solving the problems that I care about. And so find something that, one, hey, what does my body really need? And two, man, do I enjoy this? Are these problems worth solving for me and my brain? If not, find a new thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. KF conversations in the chat just said the F word has become taboo. All training should have some fun involved. And that's exactly it. Everything in your life should have some fun involved. And that's how you reclaim your posture, reclaim your rhythm, reclaim your flow in life. And that's what I got. I got one more question for you. Ready? What's an unusual habit or absolutely absurd thing that you love?
It, like I said, man, all this shit, all it's normal to me. So it's like, I mean, I get a lot of weird looks with the hacky sack for sure. Um, I would say super unusual that I really love. Man, I love rubbing my hands and feet. Like, and that, like, I mean, this is these the sensors. I was talking about it earlier. When you really start to get into the sensors, though, it's wild. Like finding again, we're going to go into the meridians here. Maybe KF Conversations can help us out on that a little bit more, Mr. Martial arts guru there. So, but I'm telling you, you start to find certain points in your body and you recognize the connections through. It is insane. Another one, eye palming right here, moving my eyes like this. So I'm actually putting pressure on my eyelids. Another weird one. Again, all this stuff. Last thing I'll say here, because this relates to something you asked me earlier, Rob. The biggest misconception I view in the space of, let's say, like fitness and health is that people think it's all hard work. And I've talked about some times where I've worked really, really hard, and those have been the spots in my life where things have just not gone in my direction, right? Everything is blown up. And so when you recognize that it's not all hard work, the challenge becomes relaxing. And so the things I'm talking about that I'm doing with my hands and my feet, pulling my toes apart, I know Rob does this as well. It's soothing. It's soothing. And I'll start yawning, I'll start burping, I'll sometimes sneeze, my eyes will start watering. All that's a sign of letting go of energy. And that's what we're going for there. Just looking at that. Anyways, it's, if you are dealing with stress, piling it with more stress is not going to do it. You got to find ways to relax. You got to find ways to soothe the body. And so that's probably the most unusual shit I do. Again, it's not weird. Let's start normalizing it.
Awesome, man. Normalize being abnormal. All right, brother. We're going to wrap this thing up. Thanks for hanging out with us. Masculinity Rising #1 with Grant, my man. Where can people find you? Where can people try Smooth?
Absolutely.
Tell us about that.
Well, if you're watching this on the gram, Grant S. Thomas is my main account, and then Smooth Moves is my other account. And you can find all the links to access the Smooth community and membership. And if you want to work with me one-on-one, that's available through there as well. Really catering this to your needs. And then you can also find me on YouTube. Smooth Moves is the tag there. And I just posted a new video, 6 animal crawls for beginners. So I definitely recommend you check that one out. It's awesome. I still use these all the time. Like, yeah, they're for beginners, but there's some really money stuff in there. So if you want to give Smooth a try, at least today, hop on there. We got some follow-alongs on YouTube. And then, if you have any questions, DM me, Grant S. Thomas. Happy to chat with you.
Awesome, man. Check out Grant. Check out Smooth. Do it. Thank yourself for it. And we're going to wrap this thing up. So if you guys liked this is an 8-week project, Masculinity Rising, doing 8 interviews with 8 people who I think are absolutely amazing that you need to hear from. And if you like this, your job, because this is value for value right now, is to like this, drop an emoji in the comments when I post it, and finally share it with somebody. Because if I see that and you guys are like, yes, I love this, then we're going to make more of these. And Grant's going to come back and hang out with me. Maybe we'll do it once a month, whatever. We're just going to jam and have a great time. And that's it, guys. Thanks for being here. Love you, Grant.
Love you too,
all.
Rob.
Have
Thanks so much.
Day. Peace. Bye.